Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art, and I teach watercolor, a new tutorial every week. And this week we are painting chicks. No, Keenan. Do your chick thing.
I'm so sorry.
Come on.
I can't while I'm smiling. Now I feel it. Let me
Stop smiling. Yes! Keenan did that noise.
That was my noise.
Keenan's working cameras for us. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you.
And we will be doing this project in 5 steps. So our very first step, we will be doing the background grass, wash. Our second step, we'll be painting the eyes and the beak. Our third step, we'll be painting the fur or body of the chicks. Our fourth step, we will be painting in this grass foreground. And the very last step is just finishing up the details.
I love a good foreground.
Me too. And I just want to say that I put a background in for you guys.
Thank you.
Did you notice that?
Yeah. Background wash.
Yes.
Yes.
I know you guys want it. I'm working on it for you. Okay, so the colors that we are using are lemon yellow. Let me make sure I say the right color. Tiger orange. Azure blue. And orchid. And these paint colors are from our Dandelion Paint Co. brand. They're an in-house brand, which are custom made for you every single month when you do the subscription, so that's fun. Dr. P.H. Martin, you can use equivalents. You can use lemon yellow. You can use, I'm trying to think, tiger yellow, actually for Dr. They have a tiger yellow that I think would look really good with that. This one would be like a Norway blue. And an equivalent for orchid would be cyclamen.
Oh yeah, that's a fun word.
I know.
I remember trying to figure out how to say that word.
Me too.
It's very awkward.
Okay, so let's do our outline and then our oath, and then we will get started. So I taped off the edges of my paper because I wanted a clean edge. You tape your outline down to your watercolor paper. You're going to take your graphite paper and do dark shiny side down. Okay, and then you're just going to start tracing. Now I always like to do a little test line where I make a line and then I kind of lift up and see how that looks. That looks pretty good. And then you can adjust the lightness or darkness depending on what you see. So if your line is too light, you can press a little bit harder. If your line is too dark, you can do a lighter pressure or use a felt tip marker to trace. Now, I will admit that I see that sometimes people get frustrated with the graphite paper, which I understand. So there are other ways to transfer images onto your paper. You don't have to use graphite paper. You can use a window or a light box, or you can make your own graphite paper by just doing pencil across the back of an area.
Oh, that's a fun one.
Yeah. Personally though, I use graphite paper in my personal work. I do not like light boxes. I don't know why. Can't do it.
What do you have against light boxes, Sarah? You know, it's just a light box.
I think maybe, I think when I'm in the zone to create, I want to like get to the painting part as fast as possible. And I just don't like the idea that I have to find a light box and plug it in
Power cord.
and being close to an outlet. Because what if I'm not close to an outlet?
Right.
Then I got to find an extension cord. Are there battery powered ones? I don't know. And then sometimes I lose the cord that connects the light box to the wall, and then I'm looking for that. And I just get really angry.
There's just so much room for error there.
I just am not organized or responsible enough to have a light box.
Where's an outlet?
What are outlets? I don't even know. But it's a lot easier for me to hang on to a graphite sheet of paper. Oh, also, graphite paper gets better with age, you guys. So if you've been a subscriber with us for a while, you get a new sheet every single box or in your kits whenever there's an outline. And I would just reuse the same one you started with if you can. Now, of course, I tend to lose my graphite paper also, so sometimes I got to restart one, but they get not as sensitive the more you use them, which makes them a little bit easier to use.
Because generally you like a lighter pencil mark.
That's right. I like to have light pencil marks because watercolor is transparent. So any of these lines are going to show up underneath your painting. If they're light, you won't be able to see them. If they're dark, you might be able to see them. And even when I'm doing like sketching in freehand and I have pencil marks in my watercolor paintings, honestly, it doesn't really bother me that much.
Me either.
I just think like it adds to almost like that authentic original feeling, the imperfections, you know?
I agree. I was just going to say that word, imperfections.
Yeah. Okay. Looks like we're almost done here. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. They look kind of creepy without their eye painted in, don't they?
Yes.
That's why it's step 2.
They look very creepy.
Okay, if you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
I promise to have fun.
Thank you. Also, I want to say, you can see that my colors are mixing here, and that is simply because I put a lot of paint on my palette. You don't need to put this much paint on your palette.
Oh.
I just get excited. And
like a ketchup
and we
bottle.
get a lot of paint, and so I'm just like, so much paint. Okay, let's focus here,
Sorry.
people. Keenan.
You brought up a ketchup bottle.
Okay.
That was me.
So, for this background that we're starting, I wanted this to feel like, in photography, they call it a bokeh effect, which is in the background it's fuzzy or unfocused, and then the foreground or a certain spot is focused and in focus. So what I'm trying to communicate here is that the chicks are in the front with some grass, and the grass keeps on going, but it's super out of focus, okay?
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
So, to do that, we're just going to do a light wash. Now, I have a paper towel to kind of help spread my wash a little bit. If you have a sea sponge, that would work great. If you have a wash paintbrush, any size would probably be helpful as well. I'm going to use my round sticks and a paper towel to spread it. So,
Oh, that's right. I love that technique.
yeah.
Oh my goodness, I forgot about that one.
So first I'm going to mix green. I have my azure blue, and I'm going to do some tiger orange in there. And then also I'm going to do some with a mixture of azure blue and lemon yellow. Before all my, I mean, like, I know that my color's mixed, but like, look how pretty that is.
It's gorgeous.
It is gorgeous.
It's like a natural sunset in a palette.
Yeah. Ooh, it's pretty. Okay, so I got a couple greens going on. Now, these are very vibrant colors. So if you want to tone down your greens, if you're like, whoa, these greens are like so bright, you can take a little bit of orchid, mix that in there, and it will start giving you brown undertones. So it's up to you. Sometimes I love the vibrancy, sometimes I think like my eyes, you know, too bright. So you guys decide.
So too much red, would it make it more brown?
Too much red, it's going to turn it like gray or brown. So if you do too much of the orchid and it's starting to not be green anymore, then just mix in more yellow and blue. But more of the yellow or the orange.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
You're welcome. Let's get going. So I'm going to make this a lighter value as well. So I'm going to add water to this mixture. And then I'm just going to go for it. Painting the area using my brush. I'm going quickly, you guys. I'm not worrying too much about perfect. I got my areas taped off. I'm going to drop in some color. And then I'm going to use my paper towel to spread. Okay. And repeat. Now the bad thing or the frustrating thing that could possibly happen with using the paper towel is the paper towel would simultaneously lift up the color while you're spreading, because paper towels absorb, right? That's like what they do. So if that's really frustrating you and you're like trying to keep it like a certain value, then I would say not to use a paper towel and just to use your brush and let there be blooms. And blooms are when we're going to get some hard edges. They're right. You can see them in here.
Yes. We like blooms.
I like blooms, personally. And then now I'm going to kind of start transitioning to a different green. Because usually how you communicate like distance and depth within like land is a change of value and hue. Hue is color, and value is lightness and darkness of said color. So for me, I'm not necessarily changing it. I'm changing it a little bit by value because I was pretty light value up here and it's getting a little bit darker, but I'm changing the color a little bit more to communicate that space and depth. Gotta paint between the chicks. And if you overlap on your chicks a little bit, not a big deal. But try not to do it too much because our chicks are like yellow and a light value. Gosh, and sometimes I think like the blooms just add, I don't know, like it kind of reminds me of like grass texture or something, you know?
It helps with the depth of field.
Yeah. So I'll show you again using the paper towel.
Yeah, I do like that. That is such a cool technique.
And then now when I'm getting to kind of this area, like the bottom inch or two, I'm going to start doing a darker value green. Because now this is kind of one, it's getting closer to us. It's more in focus. And then paint the bottom part too. Don't leave that just white. And if you're like, but where does the chick begin and the grass end? You don't got to worry about that. Ain't a big deal. You'll figure it out. I'm not paying too much attention to that because the grass is on top of the chick. So I would much rather have more grass than trying to paint yellow around all of these things. You know what I'm saying?
That makes sense. Yeah, it's like which one came first, the chick or the grass? That's a classic saying.
That is a classic saying. Okay. Looks good. Now, like, I just want to point out that the top half of our painting is most likely dry at this point, and so you're probably starting to see some of those blooms. I'm a huge proponent of letting things be and just being okay with it. Watercolor is doing its job. It's kind of a waste of energy to get mad at it for doing its job. So I've really have learned the value of acceptance and kind of go with the flow. However, you don't want it to distract from your painting. So for example, if we did this and you're like, there's a bloom though that because it's such a hard edge and creating such a contrast, it's actually popping forward in the composition instead of receding, which is kind of what we want the background to do. So you can try and blend out blooms with water, but I just want to point out that blooms are caused by uneven water distribution on your paper, which means that sometimes by adding water and trying to blend out, you just create more blooms trying to fix it. So sometimes what I'll do is I will blend them out and then see if maybe...
It's like the butterfly effect in time travel.
Yeah.
Change one thing, you just changed another thing.
Yes, that's sometimes what happens. But if you have like a paper towel that can help evenly distribute the water that you just put down, you'll still get blooms, but probably not as hard. You see how that bloom kind of disappeared?
Yes.
So that's a little tip that you guys can use if you're just like, I like blooms, Sarah, but sometimes I just want to soften them.
If I'm being honest, that was my favorite bloom and you erased it.
Well, the wonderful thing is this is my painting. And I can do what I want.
Touche, salesman.
All right, let's move on to step 2. We're going to do the eyes and the beak. So I'm going to switch to my round 2 brush and I'm going to mix a dark value by essentially mixing all of the colors together on my palette. Thankfully, my palette already did that for me.
It's a custom palette. It's called the Auto Mixer.
It's really great at mixing browns and blacks. Okay, but honestly, all my colors kind of combined right here.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna swoop out that color and see what it is. Okay, it's heavily blue. So I'm gonna put more orchid in there, which is gonna turn it more purple. And then the opposite of purple and blue, the complement is orange and yellow.
Batman colors. Yellow and purple.
Are they Batman colors?
Well, originally it was like a purple-ish color, like a dark and yellow and orange-ish
Oh,
situation.
interesting.
Then it was like gray
And then black.
and then black.
Okay, so I just want you to know that we're not necessarily mixing a true black. We're just trying to mix a really dark value. When put up against all these other colors that we are painting with, it's gonna read as black. So if you're mixing this and you're like, this is clearly dark blue purple and not black, that's okay. We just essentially want it to be the darkest value on our painting. So I got that color mixed. I'm gonna take my round 2 and get it damp, and I'm going to paint in the eye, avoiding the glare spots, and I'm using just water. It's a thin layer, you shouldn't have a puddle. And then I'm gonna pick up this black color or dark value that I mixed and just drop that into the eye. And the reason why I'm doing that first, putting water down first, is because in my experience, the darkers stay darker when you put the water down first and then drop in the color. Okay? And then we're going to do the same thing on the second little chick. Okay, and now let's do the beaks. So the beaks are like a darker orange and yellow, which I'm gonna have to put more paint on my palette because all my orange and yellow mixed. But I'll just do a little bit.
Did you know you can train chickens to do certain things?
Like what?
I think they can be trained to follow you and also do slight obstacle courses.
I thought you were gonna say like lay eggs.
You can train them to cluck and eat seeds.
They'll walk around
They
you.
do this.
If you stand by them, they will walk around you.
Oh, that would be so funny if I had said that. Dang it.
Okay, so I'm gonna take my tiger orange and mix it with my orchid to get kind of like a reddish brown color. Reddish brown orange color is what we're going for here.
Ketchup.
But
That is tasty.
no, ketchup is like bright red.
Some ketchups have a brown tint if they're like spicy or old.
Expired. Okay, so I'm gonna take this brown, orange brown, and brown is essentially dark orange, and paint the bottom of the beak. Do the same thing on this other side. Okay. And then that same dark orange, I'm going to put kind of right where the top of the beak meets the head, like so. Rinse my brush, grab some yellow and tiger orange together so it's a nice warm yellow, and paint the beak top part. And I'm going to leave a really thin white line in between the bottom and the top so those colors don't bleed. If they accidentally bleed and you get a little bleeding in there, usually I let it go. It's like a happy accident.
It is a happy accident. I really like that brown, orange.
Isn't that good?
That's a great color.
And then I'm putting a little bit of shadow on the top part of this beak here, doing kind of a color transition, letting these colors blend together so it doesn't feel too blocky. And you'll notice that I'm avoiding the little nostril part. Okay, and then do the same thing on this other side. Now this one has a little bit of shadow more on the tip. top and right where it meets. Rinse. Grab a warm yellow. Blend in. There we go. And then let's say your colors just kind of blended too much. You can always go back in and do a second layer if you want to darken some areas or create some more shadows or something. We'll put in the nostrils, but not right now. We want to make sure it's totally dry before we do that. And now we're going to move on to step 3. We're going to do the chick body part, which is actually kind of really fun. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so I'm going to do the same process. I really want this to be wet on wet technique. When I was looking at pictures of chicks and trying to they're just fluff balls. There's no structure. It's just a ball of fur. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, okay, all right, little chick, how are we gonna paint you? So we're going to use wet on wet and really allow the water and paint accidental element to inform our chick, which I think is super fun. So I'm going to take my round 6 and using just water, I'm going to paint the head, avoiding the eyes and trying not to touch the beak. Okay. And then when I was looking at pictures of chicks, I noticed that the darkest values of the fur is kind of where the body meets the head. So kind of that neck, because it goes in a little bit. And then also between the eyes, around the eyes and the beak is where the color actually is a little bit darker. So after wetting the head like so, and I'm going to do a little bit of the body. I'm going to mix a darker, so I'm kind of mixing my yellow, my orange, and a tiny bit of orchid together. And I'm just going to drop in color.
Oof, man, I love that.
So I'm going to start there and then grab a brighter yellow and start dropping that. And then this is kind of where we're going to help it move. Come on, little fella, spread out for me. Spread out these colors. And then I'm going to do one more kind of drop of color in there. Specifically again around, and I have little marks here on the outline of where we're kind of looking at some of those darker values.
This background makes me think of these chicks kind of popping up out of some grassy area, but they should have some Rambo headbands on. You know?
Yes. Okay, and I just want to take a moment and say, I need you guys to celebrate the blooms that are going to happen on your chicks. This is the fun part of this technique. All of our chicks are going to have different textures on their bodies, and that's super cool, and I love it. So we did the head part, now we got to do the body. Now the bottom of the body, because we want to show that this chick is actually three-dimensional, we need to introduce a little bit of a darker value on the bottom of the body. 1, because the grass is casting a shadow on our chicks, and 2, because the body itself, the three-dimensional form, is turning away from us, okay? And it's going under. So I'm going to grab some of this black that I mixed for the eyes, which is kind of like a gray, introduce that to the orange yellow mixture I have here. It is going to make it have a green feel to it. If it's too green, grab some orchid, but that was blue.
That corner is a bit of a mess.
That corner is a puddle. Do we have another clean palette? I wonder if it would be better for... What'd you say?
Oh yeah, we totally do.
Okay.
We have several clean palettes here.
Okay, now I have kind of like a brown. You see that? Like a neutral brown.
Yeah, that's nice.
And I'm going to just kind of paint underneath here. You can kind of see my hash marks where I laid that out. And then just use water to blend. And we are looking at a barely there color, you guys, like barely there. And we want it to have more yellow undertones. So I'm kind of spreading this color that I laid down. It's kind of like a tan. And then you can drop in a bit of yellow here and there if you want it to have like that fuzzy yellow look. And some chicks are like vibrant yellow, and some of them are like a white. And I don't know enough about chickens to understand, maybe those are different kinds or different ages, or I don't know, but.
I also don't know enough.
Are you sure though, because you just said that
you can train them.
You can train them.
That's my fact. I think it's the age is the difference. There are different genres of chicken, but the age is a big factor as far as what the feathers look like.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. The other thing I want to call out as you're painting the bottom of this is we will be painting on top of this our grass. So that's why I'm using really light values. One, because chicks are like a light yellow or white. And two, because I'm going to be layering green on top. And if I make this too dark, that green, you won't really be able to see it. Okay, and we're going to repeat that with this chick, that same step. So I'm going to wet. This second chick kind of reminds me of a, what is that character on Phineas and Ferb that's a platypus?
A platypus.
Yeah, but doesn't he have a name?
Oh, his name?
Yeah.
Perry.
Perry! He kind of reminds me of Perry.
Totally. He's Perry
Do
the
you see
platypus.
that?
Yeah, I see that. I thought you were trying to
think of the animal?
Yes, you're like, it looks like the platypus. And I
was
like,
what animal is that?
Well, it's a platypus. You narrow it.
I need a little bit more orange. And again, just dropping in. It's darkest kind of around the eyes.
When I was in Kuwait, we would go to the local city near where I was stationed, and we would meet a lot of locals, and we'd buy some of their merchandise and that sort of thing. It was really, really cool. But in one of them, they had some animals for sale, and some were chicks. But they would dye their feathers different colors.
Really?
I don't know how. I don't think it's legal in the United States.
Yeah, that doesn't sound...
But it was super cool because you had like pink and purple and bright blue chicks just running around. And they were happy as could be.
That's great.
It was amazing.
I hope that those chicks were treated safely.
They were.
And not hurt by those dyes.
I don't think the dyes necessarily hurt them. It's like food coloring.
Okay.
I think.
Well, you're the expert here, Keenan.
You know what? It was food coloring.
Okay, so we did our second chick using that same process of putting down the water, dropping in the colors, and we will go back in and sharpen up some of these edges. This is just our initial step of kind of creating a little bit of form. And I'm realizing now that I need to create a little bit of darker value here because I want to push this chick forward. So we got to highlight that edge and then push that chick back. So kind of where they overlap. And now all of a sudden that guy's behind.
Boom.
Okay. Now, we are going to do step 4, which is the grass foreground. Before we do this, you're going to want to make sure that your chicks are very, very dry before we paint this grass. So while this dries, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go clean my palette so we can start with fresh colors to mix. Okay? I'll be right back.
Good luck.
Thanks. Okay, so we're going to start mixing the greens for our grass. So as you can see, I did a more normal amount of paint colors.
Appropriate amount.
Appropriate, thank you. And I'm going to take some azure blue, grab some yellow, get a nice bright green.
That is a bright green.
Yeah.
I like that.
And then I'm also going to take a little bit of azure blue, some tiger orange, get a more warm green. And then I'm going to even mix a darker green. So I'm going to take some blue, and I have yellow on my brush, that's why it's coming out green like so. I'm going to grab some orange. I'm going to grab some orchid, but not too much because I don't want it to turn black.
Whoa.
And now I got a nice deep green.
That's a good green.
And color mixing is one of those things where I just adjust as I go, and that's why I love this kind of palette, is because let's say I like this green and I'm like, that's a great green, I wish I had like one that's like that but a little bit more warmer. All I have to do is swoop some of that green out, pull it over here, grab some yellow, mix that in, and now I have another green. You can do more of a blue green, you know, you can just keep on mixing until you get all these different kind of hues, and it's fun. Endless possibilities. Okay, so I have my greens, and I'm going to start with kind of my yellow green here, which was azure blue and tiger orange that I mixed together, and I'm going to just start putting in these blades of grass. Okay, and then kind of start. Now, as you can see, I obviously didn't trace every single blade of grass that's on my outline, and that's because this is kind of more of a free flow thought or idea. So I'm going to put in blades of grass, but if you want to add more, you can. If you want to not do as many, that's an option. I just want to call out that as you do this, and I try and always give you guys fair warning, your brain is going to want to make patterns. So just be aware of that. Be aware of the length of your blade of grass. Be aware of the spacing between your blades of grass. Make sure they're not all exactly the same.
We like variety.
We like the variety. Variety is good. And it's so funny because, like, I feel like with nature, there is strong variety in nature. But also in nature, there's sometimes really strong patterns. You know what I mean?
Yes, totally.
So, like, you're like, but which one do I do? Because there's both. Well, it's up to you. I'm a fan of variety because I just think compositionally it adds more visual interest. But if you're, I don't know, trying to copy a pattern exactly from nature, and that's the point of the painting, then, like, do that, you know? Okay, so I have my greens and my grass, and now is when I need to start introducing some darker values, okay, because this is still looking a little bit flat. So I'm mixing together some dark browns, dark greens, almost black areas similar to like our eye color here, because how we're going to communicate that these blades are layers that are kind of coming out and in and stuff like that is we have to do different values. If they're all the same value, then it's going to look like one row of blades of grass that are evenly spaced, you know? So we got to start playing with that. Okay. So kind of like underneath here, where it's kind of coming out, I'm going to just start putting areas of dark values. There's not really a strong rhyme or reason to where I'm putting these areas. I'm just trying to introduce different values. And this is kind of where you can even do maybe half of the blade of grass has a darker value because it's coming up behind something. Maybe the whole one does. You can start doing like more than what's on the outline. Already, I feel like introducing that darker value, we have a little bit more depth than we did before, which is good news. Now I'm gonna rinse it, and I'm gonna use kind of more of my blue-green here to introduce another hue and value. So if it's dark enough, and you can touch the areas that you painted. We kind of want this to feel messy. You know how when you're looking at grass, how it's coming out of the dirt and it's kind of a tangled mess?
Totally.
And they overlap and they, you know, they're laid on top of each other. That's kind of how we want it to feel. So I'm gonna let these colors blend into each other and bleed. I'm gonna let them create the cool, interesting textures where you're not entirely sure what's going on, but that's okay because we really just are trying to communicate that there is grass and it's coming out of the ground. That's it. That's all we're trying to do. And then at this point, I'm going to take just my brush, my round 2 with just water, and do more grass and pull from color that I already have laid down. Because I'm going to get different values that way. But even right now, I'm telling myself, don't do too many, Sarah. Don't do too many. Pay attention. You know, like be intentional about how much grass you're putting in there. And the other thing about blades of grass is sometimes they have like a serrated edge a little bit, kind of maybe where it's torn. You can paint some of that in there. You can have some angled edges. Some go to a point. Some were kind of ripped off. Okay. And another thing that you can do is you can lift. So we put all of this color down, I put my blades in, blah, blah, blah. Now it's starting to really mix together, and I'm maybe starting to lose some of the value that I put in. So what I'm going to do to help it is in some areas, I'm just gonna lift a little bit of color off to get highlights.
I like that too. That paper towel is coming in so clutch today.
I know.
Goodness gracious.
I'm not going to do a ton. I want to still leave my darks, but I want some highlights. I want to bring in a little bit of light to this situation. And then on the edges here, and you're like, Sarah, is it just like a tuft of grass? I just kind of did like rough brush strokes on the sides of it to show like, yes, there is still grass, but it's not the part that's in focus, so we're not going to see it as sharply. You see what I'm saying?
Totally.
So there's a hint of texture. I was about to say texture.
Texture.
Okay. And that feels good. I'm going to let that dry for a second before I mess with it anymore. And let's go back into, we're on our last step. We're doing the details. So on my beak, I need to put in my nostril. So I'm going to mix a dark value. Using pretty much all 4 colors.
Do you think that chicks would sound like this?
No. No.
Okay.
I think they're a little bit more chirpy.
Like a higher pitched voice?
Yeah.
Is it more? Is it more like this?
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, I got my dark value. This is such a tiny area that I'm not going to try and do the whole wet the area first and then put it in. That's just a little too tricky. Okay. And then kind of like all of the areas that I was keeping a space so they wouldn't bleed together, they're dry enough that I can start connecting them without worrying too much about the color going everywhere. Now on the actual eyelid of the eye, there's a space around the chick's pupil that is more skin than fur, and it's a darker value. So I'm going to mix a dark orange, and you can introduce orchid to help it give it like a red brown. I'm just going to paint in. And we didn't do this earlier because the areas around were just too wet. We didn't want some accidental bleeds. Okay. And then I'm going to kind of start following my lines that I have here on my outline, my little dashes to show, like, this is where maybe little bunches of fur are gathered. This is where we see some form, and it's just kind of dashes. And don't go too crazy. And if you go too crazy and you're like, it's too dark and it's too many, just blend it out. Gosh, look at that bloom that's right on its
I know that
back.
little feathered wing section.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Trying to decide if it's distracting or not.
It's his backpack.
And again, you can use the same trick that we used if you're just like, that's a cool bloom, but it maybe people might be like, is that another chick's arm hugging it?
It's his buddy on his left.
Dang, I wish I actually put the chick here to make that make sense. That would be cute. I'm gonna try and just soften it just a little bit. Just with some blending. So I'm using just water and the color that's already there to blend. And I can grab a little bit of yellow. There we go. Now it's just not as pronounced. Okay. And then we'll do the same thing on our other chick. And if you want to do some kind of like rough, like dry brush strokes just for like texture, like on this chick here and there, you totally can. I think it's fun sometimes just to kind of play with that. Okay. I'm going to do a little extra shadow kind of where right here. A little darker value. Just felt right. Felt like I just needed.
That chick on the left it's right behind its eye, is super cool.
Here?
Yeah, all those little marks.
I think I'm going to darken the very top a little bit as well. He kind of reminds... Never mind.
Oh dear.
Let's not go there. He just looked like he had hair on the side of his, like he reminded me of like a grandpa a little bit.
Yeah.
He looked a little bit bald on top.
Yeah.
So let's show him some little love
Okay.
on the top of his furry little head. That feels better. It doesn't feel as we gotta think of names for these animals.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, obviously the first one's Harold.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
a good grandpa name. Let's see. Well, if it's Harold and it's a grandpa, it's either got to be his buddy that they've been hanging out together with for, years. Mm-hmm. 25 to 40 years. Gerald. Harold and Gerald.
Harold and Gerald. That's good. I like it. And we're just about done, you guys. We're almost there. I just felt like I needed some yellow in here. Bright yellow. Because I was using tiger orange before, and I feel like I just needed some vibrancy. Hello.
Hello.
Okay. Now we're just going to kind of go in and do one more run of dark values on our grass in some of these areas. Just little hints here and there. We probably mixed out a lot of our dark values with all of our blending. So and this is where you can do, if you need to do even a little bit more grass. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's remove our tape.
Yes, the final reveal.
The reveal. Oh, I'm doing this.
Oh, snap.
I'm being edgy right now.
Oh,
I'm
snap.
not
That
being
was
very
quick.
Yeah. You usually want to remove your tape. If you have a heat gun, you can warm it up first. And then you start from the inside and peel away in sections slowly. Ooh, look how clean this edge is. Yes.
Nice. Snapshot of 2 Rambo chicks in the wild.
You can totally do little like...
Red headbands.
Yes. Okay, and this is our chicks tutorial. Can't wait to see you guys. Can't wait until I can see what you guys come up with. If you're on Facebook, you can share your work on there. That's called Let's Make Art Watercolor. It's for the sole purpose of you guys to share what you're making. That's it. That's all we want you to do. And we also are on Instagram. You can tag us at Let's Go Make Art or hashtag Let's Make Art. And if you need any of these supplies, you can find them at letsmakeart.com. Thank you so much. Bye.